Today's episode is sponsored by No Strings Attached e-News, your premier online magazine with interesting and informative articles from lifestyle, entertainment, and news worldwide. Visit the website to find out what's buzzing on nsaen.com. Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Author Alexandra Andrews is today's guest. Alexandra will be talking about her experiences as an author, as well as her new novel, The Fine Art of Lying.
Today's guest is best-selling author Alexandra Andrews, whose debut novel, Who is More Dixon, became an international sensation, published in 28 languages and named as Best Book of the Year by the New York Times and NPR. Her newest thriller, The Fine Art of Lying, dives into the glittering and dangerous world of Manhattan privilege, ambition, and deception. With razor-sharp prose and psychological depth, Alexandra explores the hidden costs of belonging and the lies we tell ourselves to get there. Let's bring her on. Alexandra Andrews, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, so good to have you. Before we get into this gem, which I love from cover to cover, you owe me a couple hours sleep, by the way.
I'm glad to hear it.
A little hard to put down. So Alexandra, your novels often explore ambition and identity within elite worlds. What draws you to those environments as a storyteller?
That's a good question. I grew up on the Upper East Side in Manhattan, so I'm very familiar with this world that Claire finds herself in. At the same time, I think I always am just someone who has a one foot in, one foot out, and I could always sort of see it from the outside. And it's a fascinating world, like the world that Claire enters when there's so much money, there's so much power, there's so much ambition, like everything is just heightened. It makes the storytelling more fun. The stakes are higher. I think that's why I'm sort of drawn to them. Well,
you certainly draw us in. You can tell by my amazing accent that I'm a New Yorker. Big surprise there. So the main character, Claire Bast, feels like an imposter in her very privileged life.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you so fascinated by characters who exist on the margins of power?
That's a good question also. I've never even thought about these things before. That's a good thing. Why am I so interested in people who exist on that? I don't know. I think I'm interested in people who are not quite satisfied with their lives. They feel like they want something more, but they're not quite sure what it is. It's like there's this hole and they don't know how to fill it. And I think a very easy answer that the world offers you is money and power. If you have enough money, you'll be happy. You can buy whatever you want. You can, whatever. If you have power, you can bend the world to your will. Like then you'll finally be satisfied. And I think what all my characters ultimately come to find is that it's not true. Like you have to find some other way to fill that hole. And I think for both the characters in my first book, Who is More Dixon, and in The Fine Art of Lying, it's art that ultimately fills that hole. For Florence in the first book, it's writing, it's literature. And for Claire, it's just sort of being an appreciator of great art and great paintings.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the art because I was an English teacher in my previous life for over 30 years, and I get into characterization with the students. And I have to say that I would argue that much of the art that you mentioned, when you really drill down on it, some of the art pieces became a character in your story. And I'm a lover of the arts, but I don't understand art. You see people staring at it. I'm like, I don't know what they see, but I don't see it. I start to think, what's going on here with me? But arts and the arts for art's sake, I'm in love with. But art plays a central role in the fine art of lying. What does art represent in this story? Freedom, deception, status, something else?
I think for Claire, I think for a lot of the characters, it is status. It's very wealthy people who are collecting this art because, they've made a lot of money and it's either art or wine. Pick
Yeah,
one.
right.
And I think Claire is a little put off by that view because she grew up in a more modest background and she has a very genuine relationship with art where she just feels physically moved when she looks at certain pieces of art. I think, I started this book actually. It was sort of the height of COVID. I had two young kids. I was feeling sort of depleted. And I went to this Alice Neel exhibition at the Met. And New York, it was still a very weird time in New York, as I'm sure you know, like the subways were empty, the streets were empty, people were moving away. And then the Met was just packed.
Wow.
We had to wait 30 minutes just to get into the exhibition and everyone had their masks on. And I found it such a moving experience that people were, literally risking their lives. That's a slight overstatement, but to go see this art and that I felt this connection with the art and the artist, and it's mostly all portraits and the people in the art, but also with the other visitors. Like we were all in this together and we're all seeking some sort of beauty in life. And I think that sort of transcendent feeling, I think, a lot of people get it in like a religious context, but I think or like nature and you feel connected to like this larger universe. But I think what art gives me at least, or a lot of people, is this connection to like other humans, to humanity, and like this glimpse through someone else's eyes that we're all suffering, we're all neurotic, we're all looking for beauty. And I love that sense of like communion and feeling like we're all in it together.
Well, I'm an avid reader, but I read a lot of an author you may know, Daniel Silva. And
Oh yeah,
Daniel
Silva.
Yes, one of his characters, I hope I'm saying it right, Gabriel Alone.
Alon, yeah, I don't know how to say
Alon,
it.
yeah, is very much into the art restorer, art world. But never before, since reading many of his books, have I been drawn into and learned so much about the behind the scenes of the art world. So you mentioned kind of, matter of factly, well, it's either investing in that or wine, that kind of thing. And I wasn't brought up in that world. I thought art was just art. I was, a layman to the fact that millions and hundreds of millions could be made from it. But you write about it as if you're in the art industry. How much of this was research and what kind of research was needed to impart that kind of knowledge to the reader?
I do not work in the art industry. I haven't worked in the art industry. I've always liked art just sort of as like a layman, just going to museums, and I don't really know the theory and what you're supposed to take from most of it anyway. I just like looking at them. But I do have a very good friend who owns an art gallery, Barry Campbell, in the city in Chelsea. And so I asked her a lot about sort of the behind the scenes of the art world. And, I knew that I wanted this to be like a mystery or a thriller. So I knew I needed something nefarious to happen. And went to her with all these scenarios, like, would this happen? Would this type of fraud? Would this type of wrongdoing? And every answer was just like, oh, yes, yes, yes. Like, I think the art world is just, my takeaway was it's incredibly unregulated. And there's sort of squidgy legal lines that are being crossed everywhere.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Which is just sort of fascinating. And I read a lot. I read like a Senate report on like Russian oligarchs who were in the art world. I read like New Yorker articles about art dealers. Yeah, it mostly just reading and then chatting with my friend, and a lot of it's just made up and imagined,
Yes, yes. Well, be honest, did you fall asleep when you were reading the Senate report?
No, it's
just
actually.
Just us here. Yeah, so I was lucky enough to interview Anthony Horowitz and love his mysteries, but I have to tell you, I thought I would be disappointed because we watched so many of those British mysteries. I'm not used to knowing who did it. I'm not going to give anything away that soon. I'm like, wait a second, I'm not used to that. I'm like, hey, I got 200 and something pages to go. What's going on here? Um, uh, I really felt like not just a reader. I felt like an outsider looking in. I felt like I was walking down Manhattan and I overheard a little gossip here and there. So really, really just draws you in, makes you feel for the main character. And it's such interesting characterizations, but that's not new to you. I want to dial it back just a wee bit. Your debut was an international hit, your debut novel. How did that level of success affect your mindset when sitting down to write your second major thriller?
I think the biggest shift for me was that when I wrote my first book, I was working and it was just sort of like a hobby that I did in my free time. And I approached it with this like sort of like playfulness that I think is very helpful for when you're writing. And then I was lucky enough to be able to quit my job and write full time. And I actually found it a hard shift, not to sound totally ungrateful, but it just put like this new level of pressure on the writing and like this is my job and I have to get this done and this editorial decision is going to affect whether I can like pay my mortgage.
Yes.
And I didn't love that feeling. And actually, as I'm now starting my third book, I'm trying very hard to bring in that sense of like playfulness and fun again, where you're just sort of experimenting and enjoying the process. I hope that doesn't actually come across in The Fine Art of Lying, that it felt I felt a lot of pressure. But I also think I was sort of when my first book came out, it was COVID. I didn't do a book tour. I mean, I didn't really do anything. And right. I felt sort of a little disconnected in that way. I didn't travel internationally. I didn't like nothing. It didn't feel real in a sense. So I don't think it I don't know, messed with my head too much.
Right.
Or my head was already messed. So
yes,
what can
how far could it go?
Exactly.
Right. Absolutely. You talk about the writing process a little bit. So I only have this show because of years ago I wrote a memoir that I can talk with you about later. I'm only saying that because it was a story of something in my life and I didn't have to make anything up and it wasn't easy. I'm always amazed. What is your writing process? Because your prose has been praised for its precision and tension. What does your writing process actually look like day to day? Because you're making stuff up. It's all made up. And I mean, is there a storyboard? Me, I can remember this happened, this happened, this happened. I'm always so enamored. I know some people who want to go into writing don't know where to start, how that process is, the motivation, and to make things up. You have to give us your secret. No pressure.
My secret is that I don't know what I'm doing and I'm incredibly inefficient and I would kill for a storyboard, but I don't have them. No, it's actually funny. My ambition was always to write nonfiction and I started out my career in journalism. And I wanted to write books like Joan Didion, and it wasn't until I met my husband who also writes fiction and he sort of, I don't know, encouraged me to it just seems so far off. Like real people don't write novels. And then I met this real guy and he writes novels and it sort of seems like, I guess I could give it a go. I also felt like I wanted to write nonfiction, but my own life wasn't interesting enough. So I needed something made up, but I actually do find it hard to just make up everything like wholesale. Like, you're writing a scene and you have to give the reader something to picture and you got to say the curtains are this color, the rug is this color. And I'm just thinking like, what are curtains? Like what colors do curtains come in? And I have a very hard time making it up. And I often take it just from real life. Or if I have to describe how a character looks, I just think of a real person, like a celebrity or something. So I think my impulse is actually towards nonfiction. And it actually is a struggle. What is not hard for me is coming up with ideas. Like my mind is just like churning with what ifs all the time. And that might just be like my personality. Like I'm a worrier. So I'm always thinking like, well, what if this happens? And what if we miss the plane? And what if this?
Yeah.
And I think that translates very well to writing fiction. I do have a hard time like narrowing down the ideas, sticking to one path. And I have tried so many times to make an outline, to storyboard, to have the index cards,
Yeah.
and it never works. Like when I'm writing, I'm sort of led by the characters, I think. I always try to start with the character, because if you don't have an interesting character, nobody wants to spend time with a dud.
Right. Well, quite honestly, that is a writing process. It may not be typical the way
It's an inefficient writing process.
but if it works for you, it's very efficient. I can tell you as a reader, it was very efficient, especially when chapters later, I'm reading something and there was a hint chapters earlier. And I'm like, I remember reading that. I didn't think it was important, what's going on here. And I just love that it all ties together in that way. The world of Manhattan's ultra wealthy can feel glamorous, but also isolating. What research or real life observations, because you're from that world, what informed that portrayal?
I never wanted it to be like a satire of the Upper East Side. It just sort of felt like low-hanging fruit and nothing new and just sort of reductive. Like I have family who lives on the Upper East Side. I have very good friends who live on the Upper East Side, and they're very like interesting, engaged people. So I don't want to like make everyone seem like this flat, like snobby, whatever archetype. So I did want to introduce like a little bit of nuance. At the same time, it's a thriller, so you have to like sort of, and it's fun to have these like larger than life characters. So some things like the wolf's apartment, like that is an apartment. In my head, I'm thinking of an apartment I used to have play dates at when I was younger. And so it's easy for me to sort of like take little bits and pieces like that, like, oh, that wall color and that art. But in terms of like the uber wealthy characters of, I guess it's mostly the wolves who are Claire's husband's boss and his wife. I don't really know people like that. I was just making it up. That's sort of the fun part, but I was just imagining someone who everything is sort of handed to them. Everything they want, they get. People are sucking up to them. And how that sort of like skews your psyche a little bit.
Well, also Claire's in-laws. The mother is such a powerful figure. And I have to remind you of some of these characters. So, and it just reminds me of women characters. And I'm from the days of Dynasty. It's like a dynasty away. And Dallas. And now I'm watching the Forsytes. And there's a matriarch there that is so powerful, like this mother. The comedic version, quite honestly, would be Everybody Loves Raymond, Marie, who's powerful, but not in money, in guilt, the queen of guilt. So it's just some powerful people in this world. So I want to say that my story, my show is a lot about the story behind the glory. Success can look glamorous from the outside. What were the internal doubts or creative hurdles you had to overcome before becoming a best-selling author?
Just that like I had anything to say and that anyone would be interested. I think that's actually why I chose like the thriller genre, because it seems like if you're like given the reader a thrill ride, there's less pressure to have beautiful prose and like there's just, you're giving them something so they can't complain too much. It's not like 400 pages about a sunset. And it also provides like a little bit of scaffolding, so you have something to work with and to keep you moving forward. But I had all the insecurities, like take your pick. I'm not good enough. I'm not interesting enough. And I think it was actually my husband, Chris, who helped a lot with that, because I would say to him like, ugh, it's not good. I think I'm just going to stop. And he was just like, that's just part of the process. Like every single writer looks and they're like, this isn't good. And you ignore it and you keep moving forward and you get to a point where you think it's good again, or, the voices quiet down a little bit. And that was very helpful and I remind myself, like, this is part of the process. Like opening up the computer, having nothing to say, getting so frustrated, hating what's there. Like, you need that day to get to the next day.
I through the years have told my students that writing is a process.
Mhm.
And writing, I taught high school most of my career. It's all about rewriting. And
Mhm.
I thank you for being so transparent and talking about those doubts, because you will come across those doubts. And thank God you had somebody like your husband, or it could have been a friend who was behind you. They say don't show your work to too many people, but the fact that you have somebody in your stable who could really be that body of support for you is incredible. So walk me through. You write something, you're finished, and you're like, hey, now it's time to get this out there. I don't get this descriptive into the process of selling and getting a publisher, but you're so down to earth. You seem to be so honest about the process. So now what happens? Because I would argue that some bestsellers are sitting in people's drawers.
I'm sure that's
And
true.
I remember that it's not the same as it was back in the day. I've had many musicians on the show, some who are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Back in the day, you'd play in a bar, and a guy would come in with his girlfriend, a guy who was a movie producer, and say, "I got to sign this. I got to sign this band." And I have a friend who was in a great band, and they heard him. They said, "Oh my God, we've got to sign your band. As soon as you have 1 million followers or
Oh.
views on YouTube, come back and we'll sign you." I remember, I was old school. I remember from reading, all these people from Agatha, not Agatha Christie, but people from years ago. And the business, it is a business, and it has changed. I wrote my memoir, and they said, "Oh, we love your book. How can you help us sell it?" And I said, "I'm confused." "Why are you confused?" They said, "I wrote it. I thought you're supposed to sell it." I didn't know that it wasn't like it was years ago. So between query letters and all these other things, I don't want to be long-winded about it, but I really want to try to set this up for younger people who know what I mean by this. Could you give us the Evelyn Wood version of you have it, now it's time to make real magic happen? That's got to be a lot of work. It's got to be scary. It's got to take a lot of courage. You got to hear no a lot, which is, I'm not in that stable. I hear no once, I come back in 4 years. So what happened next when you were finished?
You don't want to hear my story. It's so annoying.
Give us the highlights.
Okay, my husband is very embedded in the literary world, in the publishing world. He writes his own books. He was the editor of a national magazine for many years. So he had mentioned my book to two agents, like when I was writing about it. They were like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. She can send it to me." So I emailed it to these two agents. One of them, who is my current agent, Jen Joel, who's fantastic, wrote back a few days later and was like, "Let's do this." So that's why my story is a little annoying. It was actually, I had it in. It all happened very quickly. I didn't hear no's.
Wow. Well,
I know, sorry.
No, you have to be sorry. Could you go back and make it more difficult? This is terrible. This is so annoying.
All the other careers that I tried before this didn't work out, if that makes you feel better.
Yeah. Well, I'm here. I hear through the noise. So you tried other things. You didn't give up. You then switched, and you transitioned to something else. And I think that speaks a lot to who you are also. If readers walk away from The Fine Art of Lying with one deeper question about ambition or belonging, what do you hope it is?
I think they would like to add, I would like people to think if something doesn't feel right with my life, if I just feel a little uncomfortable and flat all the time, even if I think I've made all the right choices, what could I change, even if it seems scary and ill-advised? And definitely don't go out there and have an affair. That's not what I'm suggesting.
Right.
But I think people do get stuck in their ways, and that sometimes you do need to do something a little dramatic to break out of the rut.
Right. Well, so true and great advice. But lastly, there's so many young and not so young aspiring writers out there. So what would you tell a young person, though, or a new writer who says, "I have this, I want to do it. It's a difficult thing to get published." And I know people can self-publish now, so it has made that aspect of it easier. But what would your advice be? You were a journalist, but now you're a teacher in a journalism school, or you're teaching writing in a college. What would be your last lesson of the semester and bit of advice to the students sitting in front of you?
I would suggest just go get a job doing something else and write during your free time, and make it playful, make it fun, and put very little pressure on it. And know that there are days you're going to hate it, and just pretend they don't exist.
Great advice. Great advice. I hope those young people and new aspiring writers are listening. It flies. I have to tell you, Alexandra Andrews, thank you for being here today. We wish you the best of luck with your newest novel, The Fine Art of Lying.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.